I had debt. I had a lot of debt when I graduated. You eventually pay off the debt, but the experience that I got was invaluable.
Can you take us back to the moment when you decided you wanted to be the judge? Because I know most lawyers, we want to be the star advocate, star trial attorney. But I'm curious how you came about the decision that you want to be the one wearing the robe, making the final decision.
I would just say it's just kind of progressed throughout my career because my whole career I've been involved in the criminal field for the most part. Even though when I did start out as a lawyer, I worked for the First National Bank of Chicago, it was called back then, in 1993, because I worked at the bank in in the accounting department, for lack of an easy explanation. My first experience was as a lawyer was working for the First National Bank of Chicago, and that was mostly commercial litigation type things. And I worked at the bank in accounting, but in the meantime, I also clerked as during law school for the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. So I clerked at 26th in California at the criminal division. And then from there, I just wanted to become a prosecutor. But yet, there was the aspect of, well, I could make money going into something other than, public service or not-for-profit, even though that's where my passion was. It wasn't really about making money as a lawyer. It was more about the public service aspect of it. So that kind of guided my career. That's why, eventually I stopped working at the bank and I became a Cook County State's Attorney and stayed there for 15 years, went through different assignments, ended up in the gang crimes unit, which was, a lot of it was gang murders, gang shootings. So kind of complex cases, complex murder cases, complex issues in a lot of the cases. So eventually I got to a point in the state's attorney's office where my career developed to the more serious, cases, murder trials and jury trials and doing more of those. And the more I did them, I think the more comfortable I was. And I wanted to continue doing public service. And I think at just one point, I said, well, I think I could be a judge. So I think it was just a natural progression because being a state's attorney, a lot of former state's attorneys or public defenders move on to be judges because it's still more public service. It's just at a different level, of course. So I think it's almost kind of, to me, it seemed like a natural progression.
Natural fit.
And I thought one of my big attributes or things that I'm proud of is being efficient. And I think that's important as a judge, to be efficient and not to waste anybody's time, not to waste the attorney's time, not to waste witness time, the parties, the plaintiffs, the defendants, everybody comes to court. And the last thing that I like to see is them waiting around all day to get something done. I just, that's why you try to schedule things so for the appropriate amount of time so that the case gets the amount of time that's appropriate on the case and nobody's waiting around. So kind of long story short, right? I think becoming a judge was just kind of something that seemed to me that I said, you know what, I think I want to try this. I think I might be good at it and let's campaign and see if people elect me. So I was fortunate enough to be elected, and then pretty much since my election in 2008, so almost 17 years, generally in a criminal realm. So I was in a domestic violence courtroom for a long time and then moved to the criminal division.
Have you ever considered civil side of the legal system?
Yeah, and if there was a need or if I was asked or there was part of me that felt, well, maybe I should try to do a different area of the law just because I've been doing criminal law for so long. But then I end up just going back to what I know, I guess. So, and I mean, if I wouldn't turn it down if there was an opportunity and, the chief said, we would like to see if you could come to the law division or something, I would definitely consider it. I may say yes, but for my career so far as a judge, it just seemed that the natural progression was to end up in a criminal division in a big courtroom and try a bunch of jury trials.
You brought up an interesting point earlier in our discussion about the need to balance and compare your passions with the financial aspect of things. You were fortunate enough to be able to make the decision, but plenty of law students who graduate these days with a ton of debt, they don't always know what to do. Should they pursue their passions, even though they may take a financial hit, or maybe spend a few years at some big law corporate job that actually pays the bills?
Well, I would say it would be the reverse would be better, right? Why not start at in the public service sector? Why not hone your skills as a lawyer? Because you learn a lot in the public sector, or even not at a not-for-profit. You get to deal with, people that have significant hardships, right? So you're able to not only help people, which I think is, one of the things that every lawyer should strive to do, is because that's what the law is all about, right? Trying to make things fair and just and help people. And starting out, job may not be high paying and you may have debt. I had debt. I had a lot of debt when I graduated. You eventually pay off the debt, but the experience that I got, and then being able to use that experience now to later in life to be qualified to run for a judge and to get elected, and the networking and, the experience, I think was invaluable. So I would say, I get that everybody wants to make money, especially law with how expensive law school is. But I would say, that's a debt just like a mortgage, right? A mortgage is something that most people have to get because nobody can pay, full cash for a house. But it's an investment that you make and you get a mortgage out. So it's the same in your education, right? You make an investment in your education, and then eventually the more experience you have, I think the money will come with that. So I guess I was never one to focus on the money aspect of it. I was more in the, trying to help people and hone my skills and try to be the best lawyer I could be.